All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
It is a tough grind some days, isn't it? I know it is. All the stuff going on in the world. The man's got you beaten down. I know what it's like, people. I know what it's like. You gotta scrap for everything in your life. I know. No one respects you. You gotta do everything yourself. Yeah, I know. I get it. I do. You found a place where we get it. We all get it. Kim is here today.
Kim, how are you?
Coming off the Nikki Maduro's show. Do you guys touch on the Merrick Garland hearings in Washington right now?
We did, a little bit.
Good. We've got Rothmann weighing in heavily on that. Yeah. He's monitoring those Merrick Garland hearings. If you don't know what they are, we'll get you completely up to speed on that.
I think
also,
that's
the
good.
Dysfunction.
We really talk more about grilled cheese on the Nikki Maduro show, so it'll be nice to get some politics in here.
You got to find your lane in this world, people. If your lane is grilled cheese, then let it run. And Albert's here.
Albert, thank you.
Albert, yesterday, I credited you with a great idea. We had a major announcement yesterday. Yeah. And if you are just joining us, I'll tell you first what's on the show, and then I'll share the great idea with you. The thing that's coming up on the show that is different, I mean, I'm very excited about John Rothmann because we'll talk about GOP dysfunction in the House. They may literally, honestly, John, you'll have to tell me how they can avoid a government shutdown at this point. I don't see how they can possibly, I guess they can accelerate things such that maybe you can avoid it. You need to do it before the end of the month. They had a stopgap proposal to essentially extend spending to the point that you'd have another month of wiggle room, but they couldn't even get that done. So we'll talk to John Rothmann about that, and as I say, about the Garland thing. But in addition to that is what I was getting to. Dick Bright. Dick Bright is the former band leader at the Fairmont's Venetian Room. He worked with Tony Bennett and then everybody else you can possibly think of. His book, he's got a book. Where's the Bright? Here it is. His book is Workin For A Livin, Making It in the Music Business. And the thing about this book is that even if you're not in the music business and you're not trying to get ahead in the music business, actually it might be something that your daughter would enjoy reading.
Yeah, probably.
It's really like, it's right on for her. Mm-hmm. The stories and the people he interacted with and just the stuff of the music industry is fascinating. Live music. Remember, this guy's showing up to a gig with a band, with an orchestra. Sometimes it's a 16-piece orchestra. Sometimes it's a 6-piece orchestra. It's a really cool trip through Dick Bright's perspective on San Francisco and the Venetian Room, but also his rise and his preparation for various situations in which he finds himself, dealing with big stars and then just dealing with his own reputation. Really, really cool conversations, too, with some very big recording artists and some really, I just think stuff that, even though, again, I'm not a musician, I'm never going to be playing a live gig, I loved it. So, and he's played every kind of gig. This guy's played every kind of different music. I mean, it's great to say, well, I just play rock and roll. Mm-hmm. This guy is versatile. Dick Bright, his versatility is what led to his great success. So, again, Tony Bennett and being the maestro for, all of the different artists that came through the Venetian Room at the Fairmont. What a terrific piece of San Francisco and the Bay Area, and also just of kind of a cornerstone of live performance. Dick Bright. By the way, the introduction to his book is done by Joel Selvin. I don't know if that'll mean anything to you, but Joel Selvin was the rock critic, I think, at the Chronicle for many, many years. I just remember him reading his stuff. He's really like a super informed guy. He reminds me a little bit of Michael Snyder. One of those guys who just knows everything and, he's super literate when it comes to music. And so he wrote the introduction to Dick Bright's book. So Dick will be along as well. Also, I have a That's Rich segment. And the big news of the day, of course, is that Vanna White has signed a new deal, everybody. Yes, she has extended her deal on Wheel of Fortune. We're all happy about it. It was touch and go. Big changes at the wheel.
Career continues, yes.
Look, Sajak's in his last year. Then Seacrest comes in. Seacrest getting $28 million a year.
What?
Yes, and Vanna wanted a piece of it.
Not that I don't want you here, but why didn't you sign up for that audition? Come on. 28 mil a year?
Well,
you could do that job with your eyes closed.
Are you telling me that I'm not going to be able to make $28 million a year doing this? Wow,
I'm thinking
this is
the answer is
no.
No, no.
Well, look, had they come calling, I would have been happily in negotiation. And by the way, I would have taken half that. But I think that Ryan has a few things going that I do not. But more to the point, Vanna, she was making $3 million a year before. They work like a month out of the year, and then it's an extraordinary
It's not really
gift.
fair if he gets 28 million and she gets 3. I'm just saying. She's a personality on that program.
Yeah, and that's exactly what she said.
Right.
Yeah, she said, "Hey, I'm not happy with this, and how can you pay this guy $28 million and I'm only making..."
I've told you, it's never easy being in this business.
Yes, particularly if you're a woman. I would sure she said that, or she didn't say it. Maybe her people did. But then again,
I'm kind of a big deal.
Exactly, Vanna's a big deal, and she also probably said, "Hey, I've been on this show forever. I'm part of this franchise, and I deserve to be taken care of." And they probably said, "Well, let's take a look at what you do on the show." And
This is no picnic, no summer camp.
yeah, it's you do a nice job, but it's not as though you are weighing in at the same level of the host. Anyway, they worked it out, and it's I'm sure she's happy-ish.
Yeah.
We eat at the same deli. Very exciting. I see her from time to time. I think it's her son that she's with. Very exciting. Vanna White.
Wait, what was that character we just introduced?
I don't know.
To the show?
It's the woman who sees Vanna White at the deli.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I got a lot to do. I like to do it before the government shuts down. So we will get to it. I also have a law and disorder. But Albert, I want to, again, I don't mean to be too bogged down in preliminaries, but yesterday I explained to everyone that you had a great idea. We wanted to do something for the 1-year anniversary of this show, which comes up the second week of October. And we were trying to find something that would involve the audience, because the audience is the reason we're here.
Yeah,
Without the support of the audience, we literally go away. So people on Patreon and PayPal, they're a big part of our, they sustain us. And also the super stickers, super chat stuff from day to day really does help us. So anyway, we wanted to include all of you, the audience, or at least give you an opportunity to be included. And so Albert and I are talking, and I thought I remembered it being your idea, Albert, but the more I reflect on it, the more it seems as though it was my idea.
Oh, no.
I wonder, but I said that you'd set us straight. What happened, Albert? What was the conversation
I was just shooting some ideas, and I think I just mentioned that we wanted to have some famous people that of course, on the show, and we were thinking about how to integrate them, maybe and get them on the show. And then we came up with a larger number of individuals, so we thought of pre-recording them. Recording them.
That was it. Yeah, thank you.
And then that's what I thought, why don't we have the listeners, the viewers, the Mark T people do the same thing? So
now you just that's perfectly recollected. But what I am wondering about is the very last part where you said, and then I said, why don't we have the listeners record? Because if indeed it was you who said, we'll have the listeners record and send stuff in, then it legitimately was your idea.
Albert, thank you.
But if I said it, then it was legit my idea. So I ask you, sir, and I'll remind you, you are under oath. Do you recall exactly what happened? Was it your idea or was it my idea?
Say it was
I'm
your
trying to
idea.
think back too of the exact wording, but I do believe that I did think of those words. Now that I reflect on it, I'm not concerned that if it was actually your saying, but I'm concerned that I set the bar a little too high actually. So it's gonna be hard to outdo
Albert,
this and
thank
also
you.
prove that I did actually say it. So.
Kim, I couldn't wade through that word salad. What the hell did he just say? Was it his idea?
Yes, it was his idea, but he's worried that now he'll be known as the big idea guy. So the next time you were like, oh, let's go to Albert, he's always got the great ideas, that you're setting the bar a little too high. He doesn't like that.
You just don't get it.
I didn't get it. I didn't get it. I needed
Doesn't
Kim
want to
explain
be
it
the
me.
idea
Yeah.
guy. So I think he's saying if you need to take credit for it so that he doesn't have to be your idea guy.
Oh, that is really wow.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
It's
really
all
well
yours,
done,
Mark.
Albert.
It's all yours. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited that we have the idea. Are you going to figure out with Tony, because Tony's going to have to put it all together? Why don't you do an explainer video how people can send us videos, and we'll do 30 seconds or less, just little greetings from people around, and we'll use all week. We'll integrate listeners who have greetings. Okay?
Yeah, I'd love that. That would be really cool.
So that's what we're going to do for our anniversary, which is coming up soon. It's coming up in just a few weeks.
That's a really good idea, Albert.
Albert, it was...
Mark, that was a great idea. That was a great idea. Really good, Mark.
Glad we worked it all out.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, it's hard to know where to start. I am going to put to the bottom of the hour. I have my backup credibility glasses on today because I can't find my regular credibility glasses. The bottom of the hour will bring John Rothmann into our mix, and then we'll really talk about the shutdown of the government and also the ongoing hearings at which Merrick Garland is pushing back on these House members that are essentially, asking him how come there's no prosecution of Hunter Biden, how come the prosecution went down the way it did, how come there's no investigation about Joe. John Rothmann will get us up to speed on it. But there is a bit of law and disorder that I wanted to get to, and I wonder if, and it does include, again, a very high-profile J6 center, shall we say, starring figure in conspiracy theories around all the Qsters who say that essentially the J6 thing was hatched by Antifa that had infiltrated this otherwise peaceful rally and essentially turned it into a violent rally and a violent takeover of the Capitol, or attempted takeover of the Capitol. So that will lead us, but this will include more than just that. This is law and disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law, you're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Conspiracy theorists really felt that this guy, Ray Epps, is the key figure in everything associated with the attempted takeover of the Capitol. And one of the so Ray Epps is this guy, was wearing a MAGA hat, and he essentially he went into the Capitol, but also retreated. In other words, he wasn't there the whole time, but he was there, and a very high-profile figure, such that the Qsters and conspiracy theorists said that Ray Epps really was one of the animators of that surge to take over the Capitol, on January 6th. And then, with all this time that's passed since the January 6th attempted takeover, without any charges being leveled against Epps, it fed the conspiracy theory, you see, that, Epps then must be an operative for those that were trying to essentially make MAGA look bad. So this entire thing was really, again, fed by people like Ray Epps, and here he is, poster child Ray Epps. Ray Epps is a MAGA guy, okay? And Ray Epps then became the center of this conspiracy theory that he was an Antifa guy, essentially, trying to stir up trouble and lead trouble into the Capitol. And the fact that he hadn't been charged was prima facie evidence of the fact that he's in on the conspiracy. Otherwise, they'd charge him, right? Well, federal prosecutors did charge Ray Epps. Disorderly or disruptive conduct on restrictive grounds.
Sayonara, sucker.
Sort of.
Sayonara, sucker.
I'll continue. They filed the case with an anticipation of entry of a guilty plea to the charge. This is according to Epps's lawyers. In the aftermath of the riot, some members of the media, lawmakers, and supporters of the former president baselessly suggested that the Capitol assault was false flag operation staged by the federal government to make supporters of then-President Donald Trump look bad. So it's really more of a federal government conspiracy than Antifa, unless you look at Antifa as having been infiltrated by the federal government. Remember, these conspiracy theories, they morph. It really is very hard to find a conspiracy theory that's fully baked. That cake is always being sort of reimagined, and even this right now is being reimagined. So, as part of this unfounded theory, right-wing figures pointed to video footage of Epps in Washington, D.C., encouraging people to attack the Capitol, and the fact that Epps's photo was on an early FBI most wanted list, but was later removed. They said that was part of a secret FBI plot to orchestrate the attack. Again, that was the conspiracy theory. So Epps, because there's a real guy, this guy Epps, he's a MAGA guy. That's why he was there. He had to sell his business because he was so scared for his safety. He fled his home in Arizona. He's, of course, denied any allegation that he incited the riot. He told the House Select Committee investigating J6 in a closed-door interview that he has no ties to the FBI or law enforcement. He was also interviewed by the FBI in the months after the riot. Now, he's filed a defamation suit. He filed it against Fox News and former host Tucker Carlson, saying that Fox News searched for a scapegoat to blame all of the J6 stuff on, other than Donald Trump or the Republican Party. Eventually, they turned on one of their own, is what Epps said. So, other J6 criminal defendants have pointed to Epps during their own trials. I mean, it's weird how this story about Epps has had its own half-life. But now he's been charged, and now he is pursuing some kind of remedy given the harassment that he's endured, and he's pursuing that remedy against Fox and Tucker Carlson, who helped perpetuate a lot of those conspiracy theories that I mentioned. In a bizarre story from Napa, a Napa homeowner stabbed by a trespasser pulls the knife out of his own back and stabs the suspect.
What?
That's badass right there.
You can say that again.
You pull the knife, you've stabbed in the back, and you pull the knife out of your back and use it against your attacker. Wow.
That's how I feel on the chat some days on this show. I'm stabbed in the front, or is it the back? Then I gotta pull it out.
You know, it's not really clear all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
It's not really clear what the interloper, in this case, interloper is definitely a ding word. Was after. Possibly this was an attempted break-in gone wrong, but the suspect didn't think anyone was home, apparently. 61-year-old homeowner. I'm always, hey, how about it for my 61-year-olds pulling the knife out of their own back and then stabbing the guy. 61. Yeah. Stepped outside his house after the power went out, the 61-year-old did. He encountered this guy on his property. This is after 9 a.m. in the 5200 block of Silverado Trail. So beautiful, Silverado Trail.
Yeah.
I've never been there, but I know Silverado's pretty, and Trail has a kind of nice feel to it. I'm sure Silverado Trail is very lovely.
It's all usually vineyards and stuff out there.
Yeah,
really
it's
beautiful.
pretty nice up there, no matter where. You can throw a dart at the map, and you're hitting something pretty. Some sort of argument and physical altercation ensued. The other guy, not the 61-year-old, supposedly stabbed the 61-year-old in the back. 61-year-old pulled the knife out of his back and stabbed the dude who stabbed him in the torso. Then used the knife to subdue him until authorities arrived. Wow. Unclear what the guy was doing in Napa. He's a resident of Long Beach, this guy who had stabbed the 61-year-old in the back originally. Also not clear if he's responsible for cutting the power to the guy's home. Uber was supposed to help traffic in the city. It didn't. Robotaxis are going to be even worse, according to this MIT research. And there is a huge push to get rid of robotaxis or limit them, but that push it's being led by those activists with the cones, but it is really not going anywhere. In other words, the move to robotaxi seems inevitable, doesn't it, Kim?
Yes, it does. Even though we've seen over and over again that these robo-taxis might not be up to par yet. Not that they won't be eventually, but there's some issues with them, right? But it looks like they're pushing it through. The companies are wanting to get approval. The approval has been given, and forward we move.
And that's exactly right. Kim is exactly right. Kim's exactly right about that. It happened with ride sharing. It was a slow rollout, and then boom, it was everywhere. Remember?
Yeah.
This feels as though it may be a chapter from that same book. Slowly, we get out there, pilot programs, this is beta testing, and then boom, they're everywhere.
Yep.
But they looked at all of this at MIT to study essentially how ride sharing could make the streets cleaner and more efficient, and minimal delays to passengers. And then we've actually seen it in practice, and I would say the city's streets are more clotted. The airport is more clotted. Mm-hmm. Just Uber and Lyft and ride sharing has been added to taxis, and now you just have more cars on the streets or vehicles on the street, and all the other stuff that goes with it. I'm talking about, exhaust from those various things. A lot of them are electric, thankfully. But you just have more congestion, and it becomes more frustrating every commute. So, look, it may be a casualty of growth, but I'd suggest that this robotaxi thing, it does have problems. It may not be ready for prime time, as Kim says, and yet it is going to be rolled out. And it sort of feels a lot like Uber and Lyft. Big promises, but ultimately under-delivering. Finally, in Law and Disorder, Sam Bankman-Fried's parents, we talked a bit about this yesterday. They siphoned millions from FTX before the collapse, according to this lawsuit. Remember yesterday I was saying, I think they're Stanford professors, they're lawyers, and sure enough, that was... Because
they live in Stanford professor housing, where you can only buy a house there if you are on faculty.
Exactly. 63-page lawsuit filed in federal court accuses Barbara Fried and Joe Bankman of using their access and influence within the FTX enterprise to enrich themselves through misappropriated customer funds. We're talking about millions of dollars worth of funds. Now the company's bankrupt, of course. The suit comes just days before Bankman-Fried's criminal trial is set to begin over allegations that he defrauded FTX customers and lenders. And of course, this is an insane story of flying high and then an absolutely poetic, literary, astounding collapse to nothing. The company, under a new CEO, has since been working to recover the billions of dollars lost in customers' funds. But And of course, they have an attorney. They're hip deep in attorney, and they are both attorneys. And they say this is a dangerous attempt to intimidate Joe and Barbara, undermine the jury process just days before their child's trial begins. According to the lawsuit, Fried and Bankman were considered part of the, quote, family business by their son, who's now 31, and, quote, either knew or ignored bright red flags revealing that their son, Bankman Fried, and other FTX insiders were orchestrating a vast fraudulent scheme to profit and promote their personal and charitable agendas at the debtor's expense. In addition to turning a blind eye to fraud among them, they're accused of accepting $10 million in cash gifts and a $16.4 million luxury property in the Bahamas from FTX.
No, that's what I like. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care of your mama.
Yeah, your kid should knock you down something.
Right?
Yeah,
Little
at least a
island in the
weekend at an
Caribbean,
Airbnb. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. So they talk about financial gifts and real estate perks, and there was an annual salary of $200,000 a year from FTX, and in fact, there was an email in all of this, and this is all revealed in this lawsuit, that suggested that the father complained to his son that $200,000 a year isn't enough from FTX. So in addition to everything else you're giving us, the paltry sum of $200,000 a year doesn't cut it. So Sam Bankman-Fried, as you know, has pleaded not guilty to these charges related to money laundering, campaign finance offenses, and various types of fraud. That trial is scheduled for October 3rd, and this new lawsuit against his parents is getting underway now. That is Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
It is with the greatest excitement that I look and see John Rothmann is in the green room. We'll get to him in a few moments. Yeah. So smash the like button if you would.
It with your iron rod.
That's your little tour through some of the aspects of the disorder of the streets, the law of the court, and more. Love your thumbs up.
Smashed it
It's
with your
easy.
iron rod.
And thank you for being a supporter of this show. We're completely crowdfunded, so thank you for being a Patreon or PayPal contributor. We post all the names. Many of you have said, please don't post my name. I don't care if my name is posted, but I want to support the show. And however and whenever you support is terrifically appreciated, so thank you. And Kim will probably mention at the end of her, so usually does in her newscast, how you can support the show. So the Patreon and PayPal links, etc. All right, smash the like button. Did I mention that?
Smashed it
I
with
did.
your iron rod.
All right. Kim's news, and then the great John Rothmann, Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Republican lawmakers are pressing Attorney General Merrick Garland over the FBI's handling of investigations into Catholic and pro-life groups. During a congressional hearing today, the New Jersey Republican Jefferson Van Drew listed a series of incidents alleged anti-Catholic bias within the FBI and asked Garland whether he believes traditional Catholics are violent extremists. Well, the two had a pretty heated exchange at that, which Garland ultimately said Catholics are not extremists. He said the idea that he would discriminate against any religion is outrageous and absurd. The allegations against the FBI arose from an internal FBI memo suggesting that there may be a threat posed by Catholics. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve is once again pausing interest rate hikes. From March of 2022 through May of 2023, the Fed raised rates at 10 successive meetings. The Fed has been raising rates to fight inflation, but the central bank indicated it still expects one more rate hike before the year is over. South Dakota
not
governor...
to interrupt, but I think
carry on.
I think gas prices are complicating life for them a little bit, because gas prices are inflationary. Gas prices are, certainly in California, they're owing to, a lot of the restrictions we have and the special mix and blends of fuel that's required. But just in general, The oil market is being dominated by several things, one of which is, well, probably front and center is the Saudis and the pullback on production. But the other thing is that China has upped its consumption because they are they're preparing for their own. They essentially feel that their stockpiles of fuel are not sufficient. So the Chinese have stepped up with that, or China as a country has. The Saudis have pulled back. There's some other elements as well. And then in California, you have refinery hiccups. We talked about them yesterday. All of that leads to higher prices at the pump in California. But in general, oil supplies, there has been a substantial pullback. So now to the feds. That is inflationary, right? Fuel costs more, so stuff costs more to get it from here to there, and that cost is passed on. And as a result, you're kind of in a tough spot because that's not going to be an interest rate sensitive part of inflation. I see it as a real problem for the Fed. But, as they've said, they're going to raise the rate again at some point, but they haven't raised it yet. But those are some of the things I think that are playing off in the background anyway, and the Fed has to integrate checking off on some of that before they make decisions.
Let's get to South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. She is among 25 governors who signed off on a letter to President Biden about the southern border crisis. The letter says that the states are carrying the burden of the illegal border crossings from Mexico into the United States. Noem says she was the first governor to send the National Guard troops to the U.S.-Mexico border.
It's really odd, too, because Kristi Noem, as I think she says her
Noem.
name.
Sorry, I said Noem. Sorry.
You know her from the affair that she's been having with
yeah, that's right.
Corey Lewandowski.
This is how much attention I pay to her.
She's not exactly she can talk about the crisis at the southern border, but last I checked, her state is closer to the northern border. I'm not saying that there isn't a crisis at the southern border. I agree there is. But she seems an odd spokesperson for how bad it is and how it's affecting her state, given the fact that she is, I believe she's governor of, anyone? South Dakota. Yes, thank you very much. That is still closer to Canada than it is to Mexico. But she's not wrong when it comes to the crisis at the border. But I think that there, as usual, political hay is being made with very few substantive suggestions as to what can be done.
Let's go to Neuralink. I know you're not a big fan, but this independent review board is now giving Elon Musk's new biotechnology company approval to offer brain implants to paralysis patients in a clinical trial. Now we move from animals to humans.
I have less of a problem with this than I did with the animals.
Neuralink says
if you want to play Dr. Frankenstein on humans, if they and they are, completely
willing participants,
right? Willing, thank you. Then go for it. But animals, absolutely not.
So Neuralink says its goal is to grant people the ability to control a computer cursor or keyboard using their thoughts alone. Patients in the trial will get a chip surgically implanted in the part of their brain that controls movement. So we'll see how these clinical trials go. It's so interesting. In Florida, presidential candidate Ron DeSantis, there he is in all his glory, pledges to push gas prices down to $2 a gallon if he is elected in 2024. So if we get a President DeSantis, we'll only be paying for gas for $2 a gallon. Presidential policies can only have a very limited impact on gas prices, but the Republican Florida governor says he wants to target the issue along with the energy costs in office. He says in a written statement that he would unleash American energy dominance as a way to stop inflation in 2025.
We'll promise him everything, I guess, the idea.
Promise him everything.
It'll be sunshine and $2 gas prices.
Does it smack of student government to you?
Oh, my God, yes.
We'll also get a new vending machine in the hall where you can buy gum and Coke all day. I don't know. All right, then.
Oh, I love it. It's so true.
There's never been anything like this.
Exactly. Yeah.
President Biden is meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. At the top of the meeting, President Biden said the two leaders plan to discuss upholding shared democratic values and checks and balances, which is a reference to Netanyahu's controversial judicial overhaul. President Biden said this commitment to Israel remains ironclad. More homeowners are struggling to afford insurance.
I'll just remark on that to say, sorry about it, but just to interrupt, but I would just remark on that to say it's interesting because he pressured Netanyahu and was not happy with Netanyahu, as you kind of suggested. It was a frosty relationship when Netanyahu moved to, really go around the courts in the high court in Israel, rendering it sort of immaterial and irrelevant. And so it's Biden has done in his administration. You're kind of stuck with these relationships. And so on some level, you can't ostracize these people or these administrations or these countries in the same way that you're stuck with the Saudis in some fashion. And now, after having on the campaign stump called MBS, a war criminal, essentially. You said that, he was involved in this and you're going to ostracize him and you're going to isolate him and you're going to do this to him and do that to him. And, now we're talking about normalizing relations with Saudis and it's a whole different day. So you realize that you may want to do the things you say on the stump, or you may want to do the things that you said about Netanyahu just weeks ago. But the reality is something different, that the pragmatist in you says, well, I have to make a deal with this guy. I have to build a relationship with this guy for any number of reasons. So.
Insurance. People are having more homeowners struggling to afford insurance on their houses as climate change impacts premiums. A report from the First Street Foundation says insurance companies and lawmakers alike underestimated the situation. States in the western United States especially are seeing higher costs from wildfire damage. We know it because we see it every day, and a lot of insurance companies are even leaving California because of it. Can't make a profit here because they're having to pay out so much, right? It's just the way
California,
it is.
Florida are probably the head of the parade. I would say this. We're going to do a big segment on this probably next week. But this is a contemporary issue for homeownership in California and for homeownership, not just in California and Florida, but also on the Texas coast, anywhere where climate change and the climate crisis is creating conditions that are essentially tagging these insurance companies in ways that they don't want to be tagged anymore. They just don't want to have to write these checks and they don't want to have to take on this risk. So you end up with having to see states, and this is what's happened in California, it's going to happen in more and more places, but it's not a permanent solution. States offering insurance to residents so that they can insure their homes. If you can't insure your house, you can't sell your house. I'm saying house, condo, whatever it might be. So this is a serious problem. Again, not just in California. You have major insurance companies that are pulling out of this business in any place where they feel the risk has reached a tipping point. So, again, we'll talk more about this, and I think we're going to continue to talk about it in the months ahead.
Lastly, clear January 18th to the 28th on your calendar if you'd like to attend the 2024 Sundance Film Festival. The ticket packages go on sale October 18th, and while individual tickets will become available January 11th, more information including Park City and Salt Lake City, Utah venues can be found on the website. It is festival.sundance.org. So I know, Mark, you and Courtney probably want to get down there, book your room, get
we
ready
have
for the
been,
festival.
I had a film at the festival. Thank you very
really?
much. Yes,
Look at
I
you.
did.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
I produced more on that another time. I've got John Rothman waiting, but probably will miss it this year, but have been before, and it's a very,
you know
very,
who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Very special event, exactly.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. Thank
That's
you.
right. This report is indeed crowdfunded, which means we do rely on you. You can find more information at our website, which is themarkthompsonshow.com. You can see it there at the bottom of your screen, themarkthompsonshow.com. The Patreon link and the PayPal link, all there laid out for you, really easy to just click on through. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Yeah, everybody, you know it's Wednesday. Wednesday brings John Rothmann in. Come on for John Rothmann. You sexy fool. You've been watching the Merrick Garland hearing all morning?
Yeah, I had to interrupt it to listen to your program, of course. I know where my priorities are.
Now, John, what is the focus of the hearing, please?
The Republicans are trying to make an issue of Hunter Biden. They're trying to nail Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. They're using every tactic they can. Actually, I was impressed by Merrick Garland today. He was a little tougher than he normally is. But what was sort of sad is the Republicans just keep throwing the same thing out there with no evidence, no proof. And that's the sad thing. And as for Jim Jordan, who is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, he's a guy who is complaining that the Justice Department doesn't answer to Congress when he himself has not answered subpoenas. So, the hypocrisy is just incredible. But in the meantime, it highlights a broader issue. And that is the problem that Kevin McCarthy has with the far right of the Republican Party, the Freedom Caucus, in the House of Representatives. He hangs by a thread. And if 4 votes, 5 votes, whatever the number may be, are withdrawn from Kevin McCarthy, he will cease to be Speaker of the House of Representatives.
What is the reality, John Rothmann, on the closure of the government running out of funding necessary to keep it open?
Okay, I'm going to solve the problem for you, Mark. All you got to do is raise the debt ceiling, which is what they're inevitably going to do anyway. This is all political theater. And I would simply point out that it doesn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat who is president of the United States. We've always raised the debt ceiling with very little trouble. In fact, what's amazing is the Republicans never said a word during the Trump administration, nor do they say anything during the Bush administration. It is selective use of political levers and power. The problem for Kevin McCarthy is that the Freedom Caucus really believes what they say about the national debt. Kevin McCarthy is only concerned with one thing, his own survival. And as long as he can somehow compromise with the Freedom Caucus, he's safe. But here's the real question, Mark. What would happen if Kevin McCarthy were really removed as Speaker of the House? What would the Republicans do then? Who would they put in? And it's a serious issue for the Republicans. They don't have an alternative to Kevin McCarthy, but on the other hand, the Freedom Caucus remains an insoluble problem.
Well, the Freedom Caucus, these real hard right-wingers with, as you've suggested, sort of the, I guess they really believe what they are saying, the courage of their convictions.
Did you say the courage of their convictions?
Well,
what is their convictions?
What is it? The what?
The scourge.
Okay, the scourge of their convictions.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they're all over the road on the extreme views they have, but all over the road or not, they seem to be in control because they are sufficient in number. Is that it?
No, they're in control because Kevin McCarthy has no choice. Without those votes, he's out as Speaker, and the Republican Party would descend into chaos. So that's the paradox. I mean, it's practical politics at its worst. In the old days, when you had a party, whether it was Democrats or Republicans, who were united, you were fine. But Kevin McCarthy, this is like herding cats to herd and I use that because you're very familiar with herding cats.
Yeah.
With the Freedom Caucus, it's completely irresponsible. And that's what made the hearing this morning so interesting. The most extreme views expressed by Republicans today were demonstrated by the Freedom Caucus. And they're the only ones who seem to have any power because Jordan, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, promotes them. So it's a serious conundrum.
Conundrum would be a ding word. I wonder then, you're saying there's a theater to this such that what will happen is the government will remain open. Although they were unable to pass that stopgap measure, John, to keep the government open. Are there enough days left in the month for it to happen?
I think so, because I think there is a recognition that if the government shuts down, everyone will be impacted. May I just give you an example? It was announced today, as you know, the 3 new chairs of various branches of government were not being confirmed because of Tommy Tuberville of Alabama holding up all these nominations. Well, it turns out this afternoon, we are told that Schumer, who is the majority leader in the Senate, is going to bring only those 3 nominations for the chief of staff position and the various services, and they will be voted on separately. The Republicans know that they can only go so far, but the problem is, Mark, the Freedom Caucus doesn't get it. And I think that is a serious, serious issue. It goes along with the inquiry onto the impeachment of Joe Biden. As you know, there are no grounds that have been established. No one has been able to point a direct link between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. Oh, there are a lot of suppositions, and you heard them this morning in the House Judiciary Committee. But the simple truth is, if you've got the facts, act. And they can't. Not only that, they have a problem. Their whistleblowers' credibility is being challenged. And so the Republicans are really in a pickle. All they can do is point to circumstantial evidence. And you and I have watched enough Perry Mason to know that circumstantial evidence is not worthy of real conviction.
Supposition, I'll ding. I was thinking about dinging Perry Mason because it's such a throwback old school reference, but there was the new Perry Mason, and they brought Perry Mason back, so I cannot ding it. I'm sorry.
And it's okay. I'm just glad to say that series failed because no one but Raymond Burr will ever be an effective Perry Mason.
Raymond Burr, terrific. Yeah, that's so true. And then he came back as Ironside, remember?
Yeah. And then he did something else that nobody remembers. There was a 1-hour special on ABC in 1973 on Pope John the 23rd and the Jews. And it was Raymond Burr who played the role of John the 23rd. It's one of the most brilliant dramatic performances. You can Google it. It comes up for free on YouTube, and it is well worth watching. And while you're doing that, of course, don't forget to go to PayPal and pay for the Mark Thompson program because it's listener supported.
John seamlessly works in the references to our show, and I love that. By the way, as long as you have worked in the reference to our show, I will return the favor to indicate, as we have through this entire conversation, that you have your podcast, which is doing insanely well. I almost resent how well it's doing. I hate it when others come into this podcast world and they just take off like a rocket ship. It's called...
Let me point out, before you plug it, one of the reasons this is a success is because you have plugged it on your program. And when you plug it, our numbers go up. And for that, I'm very grateful. The difference is, of course, I'm free. You're very expensive. I just want to point that out.
It's called Around the Political World with John Rothmann. Around the Political World with John Rothmann. So, again, John, just to review, you believe that the government will remain open. You believe somehow this dysfunctional caucus that is ruling Kevin McCarthy's life right now in the GOP, the Freedom Caucus, you believe that they will somehow be tamed to the point that there'll be enough votes to maintain his leadership, and because they are so close to the cliff, and also keep the government open? I mean, is that a fair summary, essentially, of what you're saying?
That is what I believe will happen. But let me assure you, with the nuts and the kooks, and I use those terms advisedly, in the Freedom Caucus, anything could happen. But if they're logical and the Republicans want to make a case to the American people, they can't allow a default by the government.
The thing that he played the murderer in Rear Window. Square is absolutely right about that, Raymond Burr. Several people have said that. The thing that the Republic, this is years ago, it was a strategy that was introduced. It was run the debt up during a Republican administration, take care of the economy with an influx of money and spending, and essentially stick that encumbrance of that debt on the Democratic administration and then complain about the debt when the Democrats get in. I think it was like late 70s or early 80s that political strategy was both introduced and articulated, and it seems to be effective. All you hear about from what I'd suggest is a party that's all about theater and cultural wedge issues. The Tuberville thing is all about, this with real world effects. We can return to that in a minute. I mean, there are promotions in the military that are not happening now. You're affecting people's careers. I mean, they would have been promoted and now they're not. And now, 5 years from now, when they need a promotion, they have families and they're working hard. They're not going to get it because this
Families are
guy's
the key. They can't plan their futures for their children. Where will they go to school? What's going to happen? I mean,
I guess what I'm asking is, the GOP has these strategies and they seem to be, one-dimensional, but I'm wondering how effective they are.
We'll find out when the American people go to the polls in 2024. I want to suggest to you that if I were the Democrats, I'd be very upbeat, very optimistic. The Democrats have a problem, and we cannot ignore the fact that Joe Biden will be 81 years old. You can't put that aside. And I have to tell you, I thought he did very well at the United Nations. He was clear, he was precise. He laid down a real challenge, not only for the United Nations, but for the American people, for the Republican Party. My theme today on Around the Political World with John Rothmann was the Republicans battling their isolationist wing. We went through that after World War I on the League of Nations. We went through it again before World War II in the battle between isolationists and interventionists. The Republican Party has a real challenge in terms of deciding what it is. And I can tell you the most important single lesson in all of this is it matters who is president, because the president sets the tone. So I ask people respectfully to consider if Donald Trump or another Republican had spoken to the United Nations yesterday, would you have seen the affirmation of support for the Ukraine? Whatever you want to say about Joe Biden, his administration is consistently supporting Ukraine. And President Zelensky summed it up. He summed it up brilliantly. He said, if we lose, the Russians will come to the Polish border. And that could precipitate World War III. Remember, Article 5, the NATO treaty, says that if a NATO member is attacked, it's as if all are attacked. And Poland is a member of NATO.
Speaking of the defense pacts, I'm wondering how you feel about this growing talk around the defense pact that may be formed with the Saudis.
Anything that can neutralize Saudi Arabia. Look, let me sum it up very clearly in one sentence. They may be barbarians, but they are our barbarians. And I think that's the way we view our policy. By the way, no president of the United States is really expected to conduct a moral foreign policy. What presidents do is to conduct a foreign policy that fits our needs and perspective in the world. That's why while Joe Biden was attacking China vigorously, at the same time, he's making overtures to China to try to work with them. And the whole question of Taiwan, which emerges repeatedly. There are things you have to compromise on. I'm teaching a course on Winston Churchill, and one of the things we'll talk about in that class is the fact that in the 1930s, Churchill called out Germany. He had no fear of calling out Germany. But we live in a very different world than we lived in the 1930s. And what I mean by different is the nuclear question. And you will note, if I may be so bold as to go back to President Zelensky, he made clear the danger of a nuclear conflagration. And he did that because he understood, and we understand very clearly, the dangers. So that's why I suggest to you that whoever is president of the United States is going to be critical. Can you imagine having the wrong person in the White House, what that would mean? It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, you point to in our last couple of minutes with John Rothmann, you point to the remarks at the UN from the President Biden. And I don't know to what extent voters who will determine this election, it seems as though with our ridiculous electoral college setup, that it's a sliver of states. I mean, literally it's states, but it's a sliver of them, these independent voters that determine the next president. I don't
it's
know
what
how
you call swing states. It's what you call swing states.
Sure. Okay. I don't know how closely they follow this kind of thing. Certainly, you're right. I mean, you'd rather have someone who at least is in command of the material and cares that rather have them than somebody who, you know, can't find Russia on a map of Russia. You know, I mean, the incompetence of the last guy was, I thought, manifest. That said, though, the last guy, former President Trump, he leads Biden in many polls. I'm wondering what you make of that. Are we reading the polls wrong? Is it too early? Is it?
Can we correct a mistake? Can we correct a mistake that had been made in the last several elections? What matters is not the national vote. What matters is the state-by-state vote. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm willing to stick my neck out to say it, that if the election were held today, Donald Trump would lose. Why? Because swing states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio, and I believe maybe even Texas and Florida, will hang in the balance. And as a result, I am very confident of a Democratic victory. We did not talk about, but we should mention, Gavin Newsom's interview on CNN, which went over 2 days. And is Gavin Newsom going to run for president? It's a real question. What happens if, for some reason, Joe Biden withdraws? And let me point out, if I may, very quickly, I know we're running out of time. Let's assume Joe Biden runs in the primaries and he wins convention delegates, and something happens to him between the convention and those selections. Do you remember when Robert Kennedy was assassinated in 1968, he had accumulated convention delegates, and those delegates went to George McGovern because they met and offered a consensus. So this is a scenario which may be completely unlikely, but which would be fascinating. If, for some reason, Joe Biden wins all these primaries and caucuses and then is not a candidate, his delegates are uninstructed for a Democratic National Convention, which would mean, and it's purely hypothetical, that you could see for the first time in years an open convention. Unless, of course, Joe Biden endorses Kamala Harris and everybody says, okay, we'll vote for Kamala. But I'm just throwing out the scenario.
Well, those are several different scenarios. You saw that Eric Clapton is doing some campaigning for RFK Jr.?
I did.
There is yeah.
You and I have interviewed Bobby Kennedy Jr., and I can only tell you the thought that he could be or would be a viable candidate for the presidency of the United States is as scary as can be. This is a guy who's anti-vax. This is a guy, well, we can go on, Mark, but I think he's a very dangerous individual who's blessed by having a name. If his name were Robert Smith, he'd be going nowhere.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the Kennedy name helps him a lot. Find the John Rothman podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothman, across most podcast platforms. And you can actually, they run, I believe, on your podcast platform, these conversations that we have every week. So
we do. We run them on the weekend. I want to point out, I'm only 10 minutes every day, maybe 11 as I am today.
It used to be 8 minutes. What happened?
Well, you know, I keep it short. I don't use a script. It's off the top of my head. And we're really doing very well. But I want to encourage people, this kind of podcast, and I include in that what Mark Thompson is doing, is made possible, particularly in the case of Mark, by your funding, your support. And I'm not saying it just because Mark is a friend of mine. I think he does a great program. But this is our opportunity to prove that there is an alternative to AM radio. So support the Mark Thompson program. You can tune in to John Rothman at Around the Political World with John Rothman. No cost. I'm just there for 10 minutes every day in order to keep my mind fertile and our listeners interested.
Well, you do a great job, man. And we love having your perspectives. And thank you very much for, you know, the pitch for our show as well. How about it for the great John Rothman, everyone? Love it. Hi, John.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I have the great Dick Bright in the next half hour, and the next hour has a lot of stuff in it. So we'll get to a Kim news capsule, and then we'll jump on with Dick Bright. Hit the like button if you can. I guess that's a big deal. You smash it with your
iron rod.
Yeah, smash that damn like button, baby. Hit it hard.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah, all right. Dick Bright, his book is a trip through being a musician. And I'm not a musician, never played a live music gig, but it was really interesting and is really interesting. And you kind of, it's show business, you know, and you kind of love hearing about show business and how you have to sort of change certain things to accommodate certain people and certain situations. What's the best way to be? He literally, it's a how to do everything from audition to perform on stage to even have a contract with for a live gig with whatever club owner or venue you're going to be. It's really cool. And again, I read it and it's sort of like, I don't necessarily need a how-to for that because that's not my world, but it's fascinating. And this, Kim, I think is something that Julia should look at. There are a lot of tips in there.
Both of my kids, actually, I don't know where they got it. Well, it's from my husband. It's not from me, but they're both really musical. So this book would probably be really good for both of them. Yeah.
Well, Dick is a legendary San Francisco figure, too, having headed up the orchestra and band at the Venetian and at the Venetian at the Fairmont, the Venetian room. Yeah. So anyway, I'm seeing him in the lobby. That's why I'm a little bit distracted. But we're going to make Dick wait for 5 more minutes. Kim's news next, and then the great Dick Bright. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is urging former President Trump to share his peace plan on how to end Russia's war on Ukraine. Trump running for the GOP presidential nomination, and he has claimed that he could cut a deal between Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the war within 24 hours. That's fast. In an interview Tuesday, Zelensky called on Trump, hey, share your idea now. Don't waste time and don't lose more people in this war. Why don't you go ahead and share it and we'll talk about it. You think he's going to do that? No, I don't think so. I don't think that will be happening.
It's sitting in a file with his health care plan also. Yeah.
And his golf shoes and possibly a collared polo shirt from the Bedminster Club. Yeah. the U.S. Attorney General is telling House Republicans that he is not the president's lawyer. Testifying before the GOP-led House Judiciary Committee today, Merrick Garland said he does not take from the president or from Congress who the Justice Department investigates. He just doesn't. Committee Chair Jim Jordan and other Republicans are accusing the White House of using the DOJ to go after former President Trump and protect President Biden's son, Hunter Biden. Contract talks between the Writers Guild of America and Hollywood studios are scheduled to resume today. Film and TV writers demanding protections against artificial intelligence, minimum staffing in writers' rooms, and they want to be better informed on how well shows are streaming services are performing in terms of viewership. MGM Resorts International reports now nearly all of its guest-facing operations at its properties in Las Vegas are back to normal. The announcement last night came about 10 days after the beginning of a cybersecurity breach that affected slot machines, hotel room keys, the MGM website, the mobile app, and more. State of California is offering a bottled water company, or is ordering rather a bottled water company to stop what it calls the unauthorized use of natural spring water. Oh, just catching on now, are you, California?
Yeah, finally. Jeez,
right.
Man.
Finally, that took a while. For decades, spring water had been collected in the San Bernardino Mountains and piped downhill to be bottled and sold as Arrowhead 100% mountain spring water. Well, yesterday, state water regulators sent a cease and desist order to Arrowhead's parent company, Blue Triton Brand, saying it was unlawfully diverting water from the springs without valid water rights. Environmentalists have argued for years that the pipes that send the water for bottling deprive the local ecosystem of natural nourishment. Blue Triton plans to fight this order. A spokesperson for the company says That and previous owners of Arrowhead have collected spring water in an environmentally responsible way for more than 125 years. Well, I would say you got away with it for 125 years. Now you want to complain? You got off scot-free? Please.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, essentially in California, up until the last few years, you could stick a pipe in the ground and pump out as much water as you want and then resell it to Californians at whatever rate you want, whatever it is. Like at the airport, it's $6 a little, bottle. And in 7-Elevens and convenience stores, it's, $1.99 a bottle.
Right.
But that's water that came right out of our state, and it's being resold to us. And, as Kim says, hey, you guys got away with it for a long time. Party's over.
They're not the only ones that have done it either. I think Nestle brands.
Oh, Nestle's probably the worst.
Yeah, they were pumping it out of this. I think somewhere in the Sierra. No, I mean you don't get to just take things for free. Don't do it. Lastly, the El Dorado County Board of Supervisors in California is rescinding its proclamation declaring July American Christian Heritage Month. I mean, that was really, it follows complaints by residents and the American Civil Liberties Union. At the time of the vote, an online petition calling for the board to drop the proclamation had about 1,000 signatures. Some opponents say the proclamation violated the nation's separation of church and state. So no longer is July American Christian Heritage Month.
Wow. That's a big...
Isn't every day American Christian Heritage Day?
I mean, so. I feel like Christianity gets the word out pretty effectively.
We really need to celebrate that because I don't know.
I always feel like the dominant faith or the dominant treat, like on National Donut Day. I don't understand why donuts need a national day.
Today is String Cheese Day. So
hey, well, thanks. That's another one. I know, like adopt an older pet day. That would be, they need a help. They need a day. But date a hot cheerleader day. We don't need that. The hot cheerleaders already have dates.
There you go. This report is crowdfunded, which means we rely on you.
I was just looking for something. I picked hot cheerleader. I'm sorry.
I know it's on your mind.
Oh my God.
Girl, you just
look, I'm sorry. I needed something. I should have kept my mouth shut. Go ahead.
This report is crowdfunded, which means we do rely on you and all the hot cheerleaders out there in the chat.
Oh, my God.
What? That's right. Go team. Uh-huh. Woohoo!
How would you handle this?
You can find us
at
themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com. I got a message about the way I pronounce whether I say the or the.
Oh.
The person was upset that I sometimes say themarkthompsonshow.com and that sometimes I say themarkthompsonshow.com, and I should really pick away.
Anger. This is a man that has resentment towards
you. I
you.
think there's some resentment underneath it. I agree with that.
They wanted consistency. So
I see. Okay.
Fine. I'm going with
What have you decided to go with? The or
I'm going with the. What do you think?
I think that was a mistake. I would have gone with the.
I can change it. And then from here on, it's the.
All right.
TheMarkThompsonShow.com is where you'll find our Patreon and our PayPal link. And thank you for all the ways you support the show. Wow. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
My wife wants some vegetables for crudité.
I was a basketball referee.
Feels great, baby.
Use Mark Thompson.
It's unbelievably offensive.
What he's got going here is a situation.
I was fortunate. Everyone I worked with made me better at my job.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Yeah! It is great to have everybody here. Hour 2. I still haven't tweeted. Did you tweet, Albert? You tweeted that we're on the air?
I did, yep.
Did you tag me so I can just retweet or whatever?
I did, in fact, yes.
I'm going to take advantage of that because Twitter's probably going away.
We're not going to pay to use it.
Once they start charging, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's a good way to get rid of bots. I don't know. But Pinky agrees that the Mark Thompson Show is the way to go. Thank you, Pink. And we'll recognize many of you who have made contributions along the way today in just a moment.
I think keep on switching it up, Kim. Like maybe mix in a couple of thes, maybe these.
Yeah. No, keep
everyone on their toes.
That was the complaint, is that pick away. Don't do it both ways. Pick away.
Oh. Well, I don't know that it's necessarily a big deal. I would.
Well, that was my thought, but hey, just try to keep everybody happy in here.
And that's the problem. When you try to keep everybody happy, you please no one. So
that's the problem, Mark. Is that what you're talking? What you're saying?
It's the problem, exactly.
Yes.
This thing has been dragging on and on and on.
I agree. It's time to bring Dick Bright on. All right. So look, this guy has been a part of the fabric of San Francisco and of live music for so long. I mean, Tony Bennett, Carlos Santana, B.B. King, and thousands of other stars that have passed through the Fairmont Hotel's Venetian Room. He's the band leader at the Venetian Room, and this is a storied venue. He's put so much of it now into a new book. I've got questions. I love this book. It's called Workin For A Livin, Making It in the Music Business. Yeah. How about it for the great Dick Bright, everyone? Yeah.
Mark, my friend.
It is so good to see you again, sir.
I'm a little confused. My agent said I was going to be on the Mark Thompson show. No, I'm not sure what we're doing here.
I love that. Very, very well played. I will tell you, Dick Bright, that I was saying before in the last hour, I enjoyed this book, and I'm not necessarily an aspiring musician. I mean, I can state, I think, very much confidently that I have no chance of being a musician. But nonetheless, I love hearing about like live gigs and auditions and, you know, what you should do. And there's something fascinating about it because there is so much pressure associated with it, and you have flown at the highest levels. This was born, this book, of COVID. What in your mind made you decide to kind of collect these thoughts?
Well, I started the book in 2012, actually. I wrote about 150 pages, and then I just got so darn busy gigging, I kind of dropped it. 10 years later, or 9 years later, comes the pandemic, and I have a lot of free time, and I pick it up, and I go, this isn't horrible. Let me get up the nerve to show 2 chapters to our friend Joel Selvin, who was the rock critic at the San Francisco Chronicle for 40 years, and is now a storied rock historian. He has 12 books out that are fabulous. And I showed 2 chapters to Joel. Hadn't talked to him in 3 years. He sent one email, but he goes, "You're a really terrible writer, and this is a really great idea." So I said, what do we do? I picked up the phone, and he got me a wonderful editor, Pamela Turley, and every writer needs an editor, like every actor needs a director, and every rock star needs a producer. And we put it together, and I'm really proud of it. Addressing what you were saying a minute ago, I think one of the reasons the book is doing well is there's a lot of life lessons in there that apply to any profession. The highest compliment, our friend Dr. Gonzo read the book, and he great comedian, now lives in the Midwest, and he said, dude, so much of this applies to what I did. I wish I'd read this book when I was doing what I do. So I think there's a lot of practical stuff just for musicians, band leaders, gigging musicians. It's all the different paths to make a living. You know, our society is now geared so that kids grow up watching YouTube, and they see a 15-year-old with a ukulele in her bedroom with 1 million hits and think that's show business. But to make a living, you know, the odds of being a rock star are 0.000001. So this is, how can I make money at what I love? You can teach. If you're classical, you can get in a good symphony. You can go on to Broadway. My former drummer, John Mader, with SRO, my big party band, is now the #1 drummer in LA. Hamilton took him to Los Angeles. You can be a studio musician. So there's all these different paths to making money. And my goal was to give guys, show them all the mistakes I made, help them figure out what success is for them, and all the stuff they're not going to teach you in school. So that's kind of the genesis of the book.
It is. It's a really great ride, and you do talk to, like, an interview format. You know, several musicians who've really attained great success. Like you talked to, who's the guy from Tower of Power? Dick,
Greg Adams, the original founder of Tower of Power. Greg's my buddy. He's in your neck of the woods. Top studio musician. It's Greg. What does it take? How does this work? And how has the business changed? And I just think there's a lot of useful information for aspiring musicians. That was my goal. Really happy.
there's that. And also for me, I just enjoyed hearing about Tower of Power and how they rose and that sound the Tower of Power had, that brass sound, for example. They wanted that. It was so successful and so cool and so fresh that producers wanted that sound integrated into, and that's how his career was helped along.
Yeah, and no one knows it better. He was a Daly City kid, and he started writing horn arrangements in high school, winning festivals in Reno. I didn't know that about my buddy Greg. So one of my other favorites is I interviewed the assistant concertmaster of the San Francisco Symphony. And this same kind of, I don't mean to complain, but this narcissistic approach, when you're in college and you're playing violin, they're going to have you play the Brahms Concerto or the Bach A minor, and you think you're going to be a star. And he's like, you learn the Brahms 1 and 2, you learn the Mahler 5th, screw that, you ain't going to be a star. Learn these symphonies and you'll get a gig in a good symphony. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm really most proud of in the book. It's information. My biggest contribution was I say to people, if you got to drink alcohol on stage, drink vodka because it looks like water. Your junior high teacher will not tell you this. So,
no, but you say in the book, you have a manual. Like you have a few times there are these lists of Dick Bright's stuff, and one of the things you say, and because it really jumped out at me, is no alcohol on stage during a live show.
Yeah, I mean that the only way you can get away with it. Well, especially now, it's really important for young musicians to delineate and define success. And a big part of the book is define success before you start gigging. Maybe you're happier playing 3 original songs on an open mic night and getting a day job than playing YMCA in my wedding band and killing your love for music. So define that success. The corporate world, you got to be a lot more. The corporate wedding scene is a lot more, I don't want to say uptight, but rigid corporate rules. Yeah, no alcohol on stage.
Right, I see. Okay, so you distinguish. All right.
Have a cocktail, by all means,
Yeah. But that's one of the things that you also talk about, and it's one of the things I think about in your life is the degree to which you've been really versatile. Like, again, and you talk about this in the book, from big orchestra to smaller band to, all of these different live music situations and different music situations generally demand perhaps a different set of rules and different disciplines.
Well, I'm lucky. I'm not a tortured original artist. I grew up, I loved the Beatles as much as Bach, and I love Bacharach as much as Beethoven. So what I figured out early on, I was in one original rock band, Little Roger and the Goosebumps. I don't know if you remember Roger, we were a Berkeley band, and just couldn't make a living. And I was like, well, if I play other people's music, I can make money. So the gig becomes, it's a business. It's called show business. As Lily Tomlin said, it's not show art. So how can I make money playing other people's music? You study your demographics. Is it a country western theme? Are there couples? If it's not husband and wife, don't play any slow songs, for example. If it's a wedding and you're doing the father-daughter dance, don't play Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye. Not appropriate. So it's on you as a working business musician to figure out your audience and how to be successful.
It's such obvious stuff in one sense, and yet on another level, I found it to be kind of good sort of life lessons, Like when you talk about happiness or what you want out of your career or what you want out of this endeavor, you love music, as you speak about in the book, but you also talk about, what you want to get out of music, and you've just referenced it here. So you can, you can manage your love of something and your career in many different ways so that you can feel good about yourself and about life.
One of the interesting things, my dad was a public school music teacher at Orville Wright Junior High in Westchester for 45. He was the real Mr. Holland. And I couldn't do that. I didn't have the discipline to teach 7 periods a day. And I interviewed Dave Stroud as a top vocal coach now. He coached my singers. He was in the Bay Area. Now he's like Justin Bieber's coach and, big Justin Timberlake. And he said, you can spot it when a musician gets a teaching gig because you can't make enough money playing gigs. You got to have a real passion for whatever, whether it's playing weddings, being in a Tom Petty tribute band, or being an original singer-songwriter. You got to have the passion.
It's just great. I mean, that's a really great point. Like, there's no shame in anything if you love it. I mean,
listen,
you know,
San Francisco Symphony, they're a cover band. They're a top 40 band. It just so happens the hits are 200 years old. You're playing Mozart and Chopin. You're in a cover band when you play in the San Francisco Symphony. So don't pull the artist thing on me, you know?
Can you take me back to the days around what I think is one of the great honors in music, and that is when you were asked to be the orchestra leader, band leader at the Venetian Room at the Fairmont. This is truly recognized as one of it's the apex, if you will, of live performance around the Bay Area.
Well, it was a throwback, the whole concept of a supper club. There was the Coconut Grove in LA, there's the Rainbow Room in New York, and it's dinner with surly waiters and rubber lobster. There's a house band, which I was the house band leader, playing New York, New York, and Satin Doll, and then a headliner such as Ella Fitzgerald, Tony Bennett, James Brown, B.B. King. The thing about the Fairmont was these artists would come in for 2 weeks, 2 shows a night. No dressing room. The hotel's built in 1906, so the artists come down the service elevator, hanging out in the kitchen with the band and the waiters. So not only did I get to share the stage with these amazing people, but you got to know them as people. And it was just like, how lucky am I? I'll give you a great story about Ella Fitzgerald, if I may. The sweetest lady. I was also the band leader for the Bay Area Music Awards, the BAMIs, which you know all about. This was kind of our alternative to the Grammys, and I got to be pals with, I'm going to name drop, Huey Lewis. And Huey's album Sports had just hit big. It had hit really big. And he was like, dude, I got to meet Ella Fitzgerald. So I take him and the band into the kitchen between shows, and I go, Ella, it's your grandma. She is the nicest lady on earth. I miss her to this day. And Huey, I go, Ella, this is my friend Huey Lewis. And she goes, well, what do you do, dear? And he goes, well, I'm a singer, Ella. And she goes, dear, good luck with that, dear. Good luck with that. Sincere. It was like one of the greatest moments of my career, Mark.
Oh, that's terrific. I absolutely love that. And, you know, Tony Bennett, of course, I interviewed him, you know, when he was doing Venetian shows, because I was trying to help him with the gate. I mean, that's the reason that the publicist reached out to us. But he was also sort of a cornerstone returning performer in that Venetian Room.
You know, it's really interesting. You ask about, I got the gig. There was one band leader before me. His name was Ernie Heckscher, sort of the Guy Lombardo, 47 years. Finally, he retires. And it's partially because my boss, Rick Swig, the Swig family owned the hotel at the time, wanted to hippify the room. And he brought in Donovan and the Roaches and Mamas and the Papas. And it was so interesting. The older artists like Tony Bennett, they were so grateful for that gig. People ask him, how can you sing that same song every night? And he goes, are you kidding? It made my career. I'm thrilled. I'm grateful. He used to stand in the lobby, not every night, and shake people's hands and say, thank you for coming to my show. Now, could you see Taylor Swift at Chase Center standing in the lobby, shaking hands? It was just really good business, as well as just being a great guy.
Actually, Taylor Swift, you know, she reaches out to her fans more than most huge pop stars.
Yeah.
But your point is well taken. I mean, he was an icon. He certainly could have gone back up to his hotel suite and, you know, and considered it, and everybody would have been happy, right? Everybody saw Tony Bennett, he performed well, and he would have been happy, but he hung around to sort of meet and greet.
And so I have that chapter. I talk a lot about what I learned at the Fairmont. I call it Showbiz Grad School. And I think the biggest takeaway is that a true star is somebody who is the same off stage as on stage. The Tony Bennett in the lobby shaking hands was the same guy on stage, you know?
So I guess what I'm getting at is when you got that gig, did you feel pressure? Did you feel an explosion of exhilaration? I mean, to me, again, that was a huge gig. How old were you then when you got
30 something? I was struggling. I'll be really honest. I also have small acting career. I was doing really well doing commercials, you know, Goofy Dad, a lot of that stuff. You know, I moved to LA with Jeremy Kramer, comedian Jeremy Kramer, to try to make it as an actor, because I could make more money being in a movie or doing a commercial than I could playing Top 40. And I was doing really well. So I tried in LA and I was doing terrible. There were about 5 guys in LA. 5 guys in San Francisco, bald glasses. We got all the gigs. My first audition in LA, I walked in for American Airlines and there were 200 Dick Brights in the waiting room. And I went, oy vey. So when Rick asked me to be the band leader, it was out of the blue. It blew my mind. He saved my life, greatest gig of my career. And yes, I was very stressed, especially these older artists would come in and they didn't know me from Adam. And some of them had attitude and some of them, you know, not my fault, but my problem. I mean, Peggy Lee, she was a little bit a la Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard in the later years. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. She came to me one night, opening night. She said, Dick, it's like 6 o'clock and the show's at 8. Dick, have the piano tuned before the show. Well, I'm going to call a piano tuner, get over here about 7:50, if I can get anybody at 6 o'clock. And they were pagers back then. Thank you. And it's not going to happen. And so she comes down 8 o'clock and she looks at me and I go, oh, yes, Miss Lee, the piano's been tuned. Oh, yes. So I was freaking that she would hear it and like tell the boss to fire me, you know? Yes, it was stressful.
Oh, my God, yes. I really, I mean, the other thing that you do is, as a performer, you used to do this at the Bammies, you know, you're kind of like this rock and roll band leader, meaning in attitude more than just the music you play. Yeah. So that you're fun. You know, the DJs today, like if you watch them, they're not just about the mix. They put on a show. You're like that. There's a performer in you that gives another dynamic to your live performances. I remember they were all fun.
I appreciate you saying that. I was a theater and music major, and something I've always tried to do is bring their elements of entertainment. And there's a chapter in the book about the elements of performance. There's choreography, there's costume. You can ignore all this. There's comedy. I chose to incorporate those elements into my bands, and I think that's the reason we worked a lot. We had a more entertaining show. Anyone can have a badass guitar player, but choreography, I paid a choreographer to and made my band come to choreography rehearsals like Morris Day and the Time. And one of my life lessons in the book is you have to invest in yourself. I was willing, and I think a lot of young band leaders and musicians make a mistake. You got to be willing to spend money to be successful. It takes money to make money. If you're a singer, buy a damn good microphone. I couldn't get into the San Francisco Symphony because I only had a $10,000 violin, and you don't get in without a $50,000 violin.
That's wild. Here's Cheryl who says, he's so interesting. My dad was a violinist in the symphony, and my mother a concert pianist. Wow, the music in that house. My mother taught 60 students a week. You grew up in this house that also had music,
yes.
Dick, obviously, yeah.
My dad, like I said, he was wasn't around a lot. Great guy, not very much there. He taught 7 periods a day, junior high, taught 5 private students after school. And in the 60s, I'm an old guy. You went to the home of the student. Nobody does that anymore. So he'd do Santa Monica one day, Marina Del Rey on Tuesday, the Valley on Wednesday, and then he'd play weddings and bar mitzvahs at Sportsman's Lodge on the weekend. So that's where I got the whole vibe. Plus, we always had music, and I'll say this to this lovely lady and to Kim, play music in your house. Just have music on all the time. Someone said it's the wallpaper of life, and I totally dug that. It's like we listen to Broadway, we listen to the Beatles, we listen to Montavani. Just listen to it all, because kids they absorb.
I feel as though Kim's world is that. I just heard actually on Kim's, I don't know where it was posted. Maybe it was posted on, it's weird, I'm not really on Facebook much, but it was maybe Kim's Facebook page, an original composition by her son. It was really good.
I sent it to Dick Bright too. I'm like such a proud mom.
Okay. Yeah, good.
You should
it was good.
Kim, can I say the 2 tips? If you can afford it, private lessons are really good.
He does.
He has more important than that. My teacher studied with, I was being groomed for the LA Phil. My teacher studied with Yasha Heifetz. And I got to college and discovered sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and my classical career was over. But the principle is the same. 20 minutes a day is better than 2 hours the day after your lesson and 2 hours the day before. It's like going to the gym. It's muscle memory. So like 20 minutes a day is better than skipping days.
So he plays by ear, but he has a teacher, and she's using this method called the Suzuki method.
Yes.
Where it's about auditory, but The problem with it is that he doesn't have the ability then to, when he composes pieces,
That's
to
right.
write the music down. So that's my next move, is to try to get him into some type of class where he's able to write music.
Why can't you do both? Why can't you learn Suzuki to train your ear and learn how to read music? It's a common language. You talk about tools. Mark is such a pro. He has all these tools. By the way, I want a Mark mug, and I'm willing to pay.
You will have one, sir. I promise you will have one.
Okay. He has. You develop tools. Reading music is like vocabulary. It's like knowing 1,000 words rather than 500 words, and it will let you communicate with other excellent musicians. But I'm like your son in that I grew up. We had a TV. I can't make this stuff up. I had a TV in my bedroom, and I hated practicing when I was like 9. And I would watch TV, and I know every 60s TV theme from the 60s on my violin at this point in life. Would you like to hear a few?
No, we used to have a thing. Yeah. This is so funny you say this. A guy who comes in on does a tech thing, and he would come in. He had a guitar behind him, and he would play. There it is. Yeah. There's the violin. That if that violin could speak.
Yeah.
You also had a white violin, as I recall.
God, what a memory you have. Yeah. One night I had horrible flu. I ran about 5 errands. I left it in my driveway in San Rafael, and it was gone the next morning. I swear to God.
Oh my God.
That's okay. I got a better one. It's not as groovy looking, and I could paint that one white if I wanted.
Okay, fair enough. So, Dick, I want to see if I don't want to leave anybody hanging on questions for the great Dick Bright. But
I like this one. Aussie writes, I just bought an drum set, hard but fun, exercises my brain. Is it ever too late to try to learn a new instrument or try to get in there and maybe play something you've always wanted to play?
I have a lot of adults ask me that. If you're 50 years old and you take up the piano, when you're 60, you're going to be great. And you're going to have 20 years of incredible joy of mastering an instrument.
That's so cool to hear. So the answer is, I mean, predictably, but you've actually given us sort of real world. No, it's never too late.
Yeah.
But if I'm 80, could be a problem. Okay.
You go. Well, I mean, you may not get as many gigs when you're 80, but you could still, when you're 85, be better than you were when you're 80. Or you think maybe not? Yeah.
You know. And
Paul McCartney cannot read music. Is that right? Paul McCartney cannot read music, but he did okay.
That's true. Wow.
Is that true?
I'm not sure if I knew that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I mean,
and that's not an excuse not to learn how to read music. He's Paul McCartney. He's a genius.
Yeah. Talk to Dick for a second. I need to see this. Read music.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people are commenting.
Isn't that interesting?
Can
Paul McCartney?
Lessons in my book. There are no shortcuts. You want to be a ball player, take 1,000 ground balls a day. You want to write 1,000 words a day. How many shows, Mark, did you have to do to be where you are?
Sure,
you know,
it takes
it's
a
like
long time.
Logging flight hours, you know? There's no, and again, I get on my rant, our whole society is all about shortcuts. And now it's AI. And it was Cliff Notes when I was in school. And it's like, how can I get by with doing the least? There is no, and my dad taught me this, there is no substitute for practicing and repetition when it comes to mastering an instrument.
It's funny because my daughter was just saying, we were talking about this writing music and getting the notes down. And she was saying, Mom, there's AI programs that'll do that. All he has to do is play the notes and AI will pick it up and will spit out the music. You can just print it out. And I thought, no, that's not what I want. If he is going to love music through his life, I want him to be able to write the notes down himself. I want that for him.
It will give him a better shot.
Yeah.
Maybe not as good as reading my book, but it will give us a better shot.
Albert, put the book back up there for everybody, and
you are too kind. Really, you are too kind.
Yeah, Working for a Living, making it in the music business by the great Dick Bright. The introduction is by Joel Selvin. Amazon, and you know, Joel Selvin. The longtime rock critic or music critic, right? And it was really cool that he wrote the intro to your book. And
Joel is kind of the godfather of all us, you know, 70s rock and rollers in the Bay Area. He was a gift to the Bay Area. He's now a renowned rock historian, Mark. He's written 10, 12 books. Altamont, he wrote an amazing book. Ricky Nelson, Sly Stone.
Wow, I'd love to get him on the show. Maybe you can help broker that, Dick, right? Will you put us together? We'd love to have him on the show.
Oh my God. And he's got a new book coming out on this amazing drummer named Jim Gordon. It's an amazing story. I would love to hook you two up.
Okay, that'll be something that'll be in the pipeline then. I would love to do it. Again, working for a living, making it in the music. By the way, it is true. Paul McCartney cannot read music. But as Dick has said, he's an exception.
I love Paul, but now I'm not so sure I want to work with him,
A question from Loud Robert. Loud Robert wants to know if Mr. Bright was involved in the Gilligan's Island theme done to the tune of Stairway to Heaven.
Always did comedy long before Weird Al on a stoner-filled night, Little Roger and the Goosebumps, long before mashup, put the words to Gilligan's Island to the theme from Stairway to Heaven, got threatened lawsuit at age 22 by Led Zeppelin. The goons came to Little Roger's parents' house in the Oakland Hills. It was kind of awesome.
Wow, that's a great story. Thank you, Loud Robert. I thought it was out of left field, but bam, terrific.
A lot of people are talking about your years on San Francisco radio with Alex Bennett, remembering back to those days.
Mark, you remember Alex? Well, I've always
loved
comedy and music, and Alex did these live shows at 6 a.m. So we had Dick Bright and the Pop-Tarts, Buddy Love was in the band, and we would do the Paul Schaefer thing. He'd bring on Robin Williams and Dana Carvey, and we'd play da-da-da at 6 a.m.
Oh, that's terrific.
After working till 2 at the Red Chimney in Stonestown, we get about 2 hours sleep, go over to the punchline, set up, and sound check at 5:30 a.m. about 4 times a year.
You weren't in The Godfather 2, were you?
That is Richard Bright.
Oh, okay.
How dare you, Joseph? Please.
And when I went to get my SAG card, Mark, you can't have the same name. I could have been Richard L. Bright.
Oh, I see.
Because they'll screw up the residual. I should have said that. I'd get the residual checks,
Well, it should have been you.
There's another Mark Thompson. We've actually had him on the show. There are many Mark Thompson, but there's another one who also was a radio guy and on-camera guy. So very similar to my career. And
where's he?
He's in North Carolina now, but he was very successful here in L.A. and Southern California.
Oh, okay.
And he made a ton of money. But the reason I mention it is his checks did used to come to me. I mean, some of them, and I would have to send them back. Sadly. So it does happen, but that was Richard Bright in Godfather 2.
Do you remember Jack Gallagher, the comedian? Very funny guy, very dear friend of mine. And then there's Gallagher who smashes the watermelon.
Right.
Jack told me this story. Talk about marketing and you're sharing a name. He shows up at a teeny nightclub in B blank, Indiana, and it says now appearing Gallagher. And Jack goes, "What are you doing? They're going to expect the guy." And the owner goes, "I thought we'd sell more tickets this way." Swear to God.
That is funny. Yeah, talk about a disappointed audience. What? Yeah. Oh, it's great. Dick, come visit again. You don't need the excuse of writing a book. Really love it. Working for a living, making it in the music business. Check it out. And as I say, the great Dick Bright. It's so much fun to talk to you again,
Bay Area, Mark. We miss you, man.
I miss seeing you on stage. It was always so much fun. So I look forward to our next visit. Thanks, buddy. Dick Bright, everybody.
Thank you.
Wow, love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So
Is he
great.
or what?
Really fun, yeah.
Just the best, yeah. And a fun little walk-through time with some great stories. Imagine being these legendary musicians.
Yeah.
Ella Fitzgerald, and she has to stay in the kitchen till she comes on because there's no green room. You know what I mean? And that conversation with Huey Lewis, oh, that's great. Can't wait to break that out as a separate video. We'll break it out as a separate video. If you want to push it on to anybody, share it. I think it's a lot of fun. So smash the like button for Dick Bright.
Smash it with your iron rod.
I also want to acknowledge, if I could, Albert, where have you been, Albert? I need to acknowledge.
Albert, thank you.
Some of the people who've been so generous today. Francine with a 20. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
That's
to
nice.
Francine. That is really cool. Super sticker from Francine in our live show. We appreciate all the support. Kathleen Marshall with a super sticker for 20.
Big shout out.
Big shout out, Kathleen Marshall. Thank you so much, Kathleen Marshall. In fact, I'd like to say
Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Kathleen Marshall. Luis, Mark, you are being played by Albert. You are his great idea fall guy, part of his continued campaign of promoting mediocrity while delivering greatness in a no-pressure environment free of lofty expectations.
Yep.
Wow.
He's no fool.
Who knew? It's a it's a complicated.
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Yeah, so you're saying that Albert likes to keep the expectations low.
Yeah.
Then he ascribes the brilliant idea to me. And then in so doing, he's never associated with greatness. Wow. That seems a little complicated for Albert's thinking, but it's possible. I'm not ruling it out.
Albert, thank you.
And I want to thank you for the super chat, by the way, Luis. Yeah. Anyway, if you're just joining us, and we're going to take a quick news break, I'd like to get you some news on the way out. We are still trying to figure out, although it would appear remarkably that Albert had this idea. It's a great idea because our first anniversary is coming up in a few weeks, and we wanted to do something that included the audience. And so essentially to give access to the audience, we want to invite the audience to send us little, it could be 10 seconds even, a little video saying, hey, just want to say, hey to you guys, thanks for everything you do. I guess they could even send audio with no video, Albert, if they wanted to. Could that happen?
I think that could happen too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can connect it to us on social media too. You could just tag us, maybe just tag Mark, or maybe we'll have a separate handle. So I'll just go on that handle and we'll
yeah,
have all the videos there.
We've got to figure out how to do it. We're going to do it with I feel like between Albert and Tony, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But it was Albert's idea to have this way to reach out to us.
Yeah, it's really nice. Although I would say it doesn't have to be a positive message. It could be, you guys really suck. I have no idea why a year later I'm still here. I don't understand.
I'd love, I love negative. I love that. It's Kim who blocks people. I don't, my view is I don't care. Call me a lib, call me a whatever, idiot, lib, blah, blah, blah. You're a commie, Marxist, whatever. I don't know how I deserve those labels, but I'm happy to hear them,
Hey, they click on the video, we get the advertisements. It's fine.
Albert, thank you.
But anyway, that's been planned, and we're getting it all organized. And by the way, somebody sent me an email. I'm trying to remember who it was. And they said, why don't you just do a huge
I've received
Zoom,
a lot of positive letters.
Why don't you do a huge Zoom where everybody can be in on the Zoom, and you can have 200 people in the Zoom. Well,
that'd be
because
chaos.
It's a mess, right? Yeah. Exactly. Just can't do it. It just doesn't. I mean, it's a cool idea. In a way, it's an inclusive idea. I like that. JR Marxist. That's the kind of Marxist I am, right? I'm the Mark in Marxist. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite come together, I think, from a practical standpoint. So I hope this will. My thinking is some of the serious channels have you email a voice intro. This is interesting. A voice memo. Yeah, you could do a voice memo and send it to us, right, Albert?
Yeah, if you have an iPhone, you can just do voice memo, send that to our email address here.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. Becky, with the coolest last name that I don't want to screw up. Becky says some of the serious channels have you email a voice memo, and you could do that. You could put a voice memo down. You don't have to have your face. And you could just say, hey, this is to you guys. Just want to say happy 1 year on the air. Never thought it would happen, whatever. And you could send it to our email, and we can run that. Good thought, Becky. That's a really good thought. So Becky had the great idea now. Yeah. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. It's an easy email address to remember. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com.
Mark, that's a great idea by you, by the way. The voice memo
Albert,
thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was a great idea.
Well, I am.
Do you know who I am?
I am pretty.
Kind of a big
done
deal.
a lot of stuff, and How do you do a voice memo? Says Vilma.
Oh.
Here we go. We have to show everybody how to do it.
Or you could actually record the video on any device on your phone and then send that video as an email. That also works as an attachment.
Yeah, I mean, there it is. That's all you need to do. Record yourself. Android also has voice memos, says JR. So Vilma, all you have to do is record your voice on your phone. You know how to do that. And then just share it, send it, in email form to us, themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. There you go. Kim has some news.
I do.
And we'll do a news capsule, and we'll then mop up around here. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, here's your news capsule. You get 3 a day on the Mark Thompson Show. You can take it with water or orange juice. Here it is. This is Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer trying to go around
that's
man.
Not Chuck Schumer.
No,
oh,
featured here.
Okay.
Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville's block on military promotions. So this is Tuberville pictured here. Schumer today moved to tee up votes on 3 key promotions, including the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The Senate will hold one-off votes on top military brass, which are usually done together. This comes as Tuberville has held up more than 300 promotions in protest of the Pentagon's abortion policy. The current policy allows service members to be reimbursed if they travel out of state for an abortion. Tuberville, of course, doesn't want any of that to happen. So we'll see if the Senate is successful in going around this Tuberville blockage. The president of the United Auto Workers Union says more workers will join the strike on Friday if automakers don't offer a fair deal. Nearly 13,000 UAW workers are on day 6 of their strike against the big 3 U.S. automakers. They want better pay and they want pension benefits too.
They've done something very strategically clever. They have made their point, having struck a handful of factories, but they haven't had to call a general strike yet. And that means that striking workers, because they're not huge in number yet, I mean, it's a big number, but it's not like a general strike number. They can all draw on the strike fund, right, that the UAW has. So that helps soften the blow a little bit. And it has the additional benefit of providing enough noise. I mean, it's a big enough deal, if you want to think of it that way, this strike, that you've got the UAW head on television, on Meet the Press, and on Face the Nation, and in the nightly news cycle, and you have CEOs being called out as to how much money they're making. In other words, you bring the issue front and center without having to call a general strike. It's strategically very clever, and that's what the UAW is doing now.
Let's move to Anthony Blinken, because he is at the UN and he is saying today that Russia is committing war crimes and crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Speaking before the UN Security Council today, Blinken said Russia is attacking the core principles of the UN Charter. Yesterday, President Biden addressed the UN General Assembly as well. So strong words from Secretary of State Blinken. The FDA says some more information is needed before they're going to be ready to approve the first nasal spray alternative to the EpiPen. It's called Neffy, and the FDA is rejecting Neffy, which would be the first nasal spray alternative to the EpiPen for people with life-threatening allergies. The ARS Pharma, which makes Neffy, says it will appeal this decision. So a lot of people are excited about this because it's a nasal spray. Instead of jabbing someone with a needle, it would be a lot easier to maybe give this medication to someone who's suffering from some type of allergic reaction. But nope, no approval just yet. If you are in the Bay Area, you may have noticed all the smoke. It's fires burning in Northern California and also Southern Oregon, sending smoke into the Bay Area and also the Sacramento Valley. The result is that the air quality indexes are unhealthy for sensitive groups. Children, pregnant women, older adults, those with certain medical conditions, especially vulnerable. So if you see or smell the smoke, just hang out inside, keep the doors and windows closed. PurpleAir.com shows the worst air quality in the North Bay wine country, San Francisco and Oakland, and in the Central Valley, the sensors show a line of poor readings from Chico south to Merced. A red flag warning is in place for most of the region through Thursday as well. 1 year after a leaked racist phone call upended his political career. Los Angeles City Councilman Kevin De Leon says he's going to actually run again. After all that, he says, we're going for it one more time. One more round, a little more for me.
Right.
How would you handle this?
Hey.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
Yeah. He's going to ignore the whole thing.
Let the voters decide, right? I mean, why not? Yeah, here he is. He's going for it one more time around. He is representing some or all of downtown Los Angeles, Boyle Heights, El Sereno, Eagle Rock. He says he wants his name on the March ballot for a chance to serve another 4 years. De Leon says many of his political allies have abandoned him, but his constituents have not.
He might be right about that, actually. Yeah. He might be right. I think that this is a bigger deal to his colleagues and to media than it is to his constituents.
You don't think they care, huh?
I don't think to a person they don't care, but all you need is a sufficient number who vote to vote you in. So.
Yeah. Well, the race for his seat is crowded. There's about a dozen people that have declared their candidacy for that seat. If one candidate doesn't receive a clear majority of the votes in March, the top 2 vote getters will enter into a runoff. So,
and that crowded world might help him. He's helped by a crowded field. So.
You too. Lastly, visitors in downtown Las Vegas might find themselves in a U2 music video. U2 drew a crowd while shooting the street performance of their newest song, Atomic City, on Fremont Street. U2 opened their residency at the brand new Sphere Las Vegas on Friday, September 29th. So a lot of people were just hanging out in Las Vegas, and all of a sudden now they're in a music video. Look at that. Yeah, look at them. I think that's the Kennedy Presidential Honors, right, with the rainbows.
Oh, is that it? Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. We are just loving the tea from Coachella Valley. I am loving the tea, I'll say, from Coachella Valley Coffee. But the coffee is pretty darn good, too. If you would like to take advantage of the exclusive Mark Thompson Show discount, enter Mark T at checkout. Mark T, all together, get your 10% off at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
I just got another 2-pound bags of but you have to pick the bean that's right for you. I like the El Gato and I like the Ocotillo espresso, but I like dark, rich, stuff that really hits you.
Yeah.
So if you go there, they have a sunrise bean, and they have all of these different tasting notes under every bean, so you can actually see what you're purchasing. And we also got some tea for Courtney, and then even a little tea for me, the Earl Grey, which I'm more of a traditional rather than the floral teas. I like some more of an Earl Grey thing. And they send you, the tea, and it's the loose leaves, and you can. It's just. The reason I like Coachella Valley, as I've told you before, is it's fresh crop, it's new crop. That's the reason the beans are a bit more expensive, and it's all hand roasted. So this is a place that really takes pride in what you will get and how their stuff tastes. And so I encourage you to try it and enjoy it, as do we. And they are great sponsors of the show. I never thought in a million years this coffee that I've been buying for years, because I just discovered them a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I discovered them, that they would end up on our show is a dream. It's really cool. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. When you check out, use Mark T, and it's 10% off anything you bought, not just coffee, tea, merch, whatever you get 10% off. So
I'm Kim McAllister. Este es el programa de Mark Thompson. Instead of saying the or the, I'm just going with el programa de Mark Thompson.
Well, all right.
Mark
that
Thompson.
Works. That works. All right.
Yes.
All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
My wife wants some vegetables for Crudite Day.
I was a basketball referee.
Feels great, baby.
Who's Mark Thompson?
It's unbelievably offensive.
What he's got going here is a situation.
I was fortunate. Everyone I worked with made me better at my job.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Yeah, I know. I'm all about it, too. Check out a super sticker from John Woodard. Come on, John. What up with you? Big shout out. Where's my big shout out? Albert? Albert? Where is my big shout out?
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do
They
it for.
do. Why do they do it? I want my big shout
out.
Shout out. Thank you. Thank you, John Woodard, with a $5. Thank you, Pinky, for $1 a day.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Appreciate that. I did want to squeeze in, if I could, before the after party live. I did, by the way, notice yesterday that there were disparaging remarks made.
Here it comes.
About this show and the fact that we don't end on time.
Oh, yeah. Well,
they were made by John Daly, your host. Your
he's a stickler for time, you know?
Yeah, but I don't understand why he's dumping on me.
Fabulous producer, John Daly.
I completely promoted your show.
Yeah,
I promote it every day.
Yeah,
I steer people over.
Yeah.
I think he's making a big mistake.
Oh.
You don't want to get on my bad side, John Daly.
My bad. I'm sorry.
There you go. I think
I think we'll go to 105 today. That's my producer decision. That's my idea. So
I love
Albert. Thank you.
Blame anybody,
That's
he
my
can blame me.
I love it.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Do you know when the networks did something, they did it with the idea that if they extended their shows to 5 minutes after the normal time the shows ended, that it would force people into the next show and they wouldn't bail on their network and go over to a different network. So that's why, the Tonight Show starts at 11:35 and a bunch of the clock shifted. This is now you can watch on demand and it's a little less relevant, but that was a big decision. Similarly here, we go a little over and then we push people to Kim's World, and then you can listen to the after party live and watch the after party live as it goes down. But I do want to give people, one more story, which I think is a little...
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the weird side, that Danish artist who did that artwork, 2 canvases, and they were blank. He's been ordered to return nearly 500,000 kroner. That's $72,000. He's been ordered to return the money to this museum after, again, giving the museum 2 blank canvases for a project he named Take the Money and Run.
What?
The Kunsten Museum in Aalborg had intended for Jens Hanning to embed the banknotes in 2 pieces of art in 2021. Instead of embedding the banknotes, Jens Hanning gave them back blank canvases and then told them, quote, "The work is that I have taken their money." A court has now ordered him to return the cash. The art project was intended as a statement on salaries in Denmark and Austria. The museum asked the artist to return all the money, around 534,000 kroner, but Hanning refused. Now they had this long legal battle, and it's just now finishing. And a Copenhagen court ordered Mr. Hanning, 58 years old, to refund the museum most of that, 492,000 kroner. So they keep a little bit for expenses, they say.
Shouldn't have called it Take the Money and Run.
Yeah, he really was very in your face with it.
You could argue, Albert has the picture of this, that when you stand in front of a blank canvas, your imagination goes wild, and you're imagining what could be on there, or you're imagining the colors you'd like to see on there, whatever. So it could be that the blank canvas is art because it requires people to use their imagination.
That's not fake.
Wow.
That's real.
Yeah.
If you made that type of argument, then maybe. But if you call it Take the Money and Run, no. I'm sorry.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. It's a little bit in your face. Yeah. I agree. It has been good for my work, he said, but it also puts me in an unmanageable situation where I don't really know what to do.
Get nothing.
Yes. Art is in the eye of the beholder, says Karen Cooper. I suppose that's true, but I mean, I guess it's an idea, but it's not really a piece of art.
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
It is a wild idea. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely among.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
I don't think there's alcohol involved.
You never know.
But
what can you tell us about the scene?
It's a blank canvas, Larry. It's a blank canvas. Well, anyway,
I'm glad
very.
He did make it pretty far into it. He was so on the nose about it. He was literally telling them from the start what he was doing, and he made it pretty far into it, and he got the money. So
true. Yeah, I am robbing you, and that's the idea, right?
And you can wire the money to this account. Oh, they actually did that? Okay.
Yeah, they got.
That was a surprise.
Such a great honor to have participated.
Yeah, it's a grift. There's the grifter in chief. Yeah.
You guys, I can't believe it worked. You know, the thing I told you. Yeah. I was going to tell them. Yeah. They actually sent the money.
All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I know when you've heard enough. Okay.
Is it over?
Sadly, we must pack up.
It was a good show.
I thought it was a really good show.
Yeah.
Loved having Dick Bright on. Loved having John Rothmann on. Loved having Kim here with Albert.
Yeah.
Albert, your work doesn't end here, does it, Albert?
No, it doesn't. But there's a full show of great ideas that I'm really excited to share even more.
And we will work with Tony to make this idea come to life and formally announce this week how it will work. By the way, I think tomorrow you will be with us, Albert. Isn't that what Tony told you?
I wasn't told anything about this.
Can't get hold of the effing. Oh my God, they do this to me all the time.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
It's for the Mark Thompson Show.
I'll talk to you about it, Albert. All right.
Kind of show
the after party live.
We'll do it live. It's all right.
And we'll do it live. After party live next. See you tomorrow, everyone. Till then, bye-bye.